Welcome, everybody. I am Kamil Sarji, your host of Just 2 Minutes. And today I have Stella. Stella, you want to tell us about yourself?
Yes, I'm Stella Guerra. Thank you for having me. I'm an attorney and I'm licensed in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New York. And I reside in Rhode Island, so I focus most of my business here. And I've been an attorney now for 26 years. Hopefully, I'm not dating myself. I absolutely love what I do. I have to say, it is all about people. And I think that's the part that I love the most. So I focus my practice on residential and commercial real estate. So I do other areas of practice, family law, probate work, wills and trusts and things like that. But the majority has always been real estate. So,
Nice.
And I do have the advantage of doing what I do in Spanish because I'm fluent in Spanish. So I do cater to the Hispanic community, which is a beautiful thing.
And that's what makes you special, because there's not many.
So I really enjoy the ability to be able to, for me, it's just an extension of who I am. So it's effortless. It's nothing additional. There's nobody translating. There's no need for anyone to be present to translate, which is wonderful because really nobody should be translating. It should be a direct communication between the client and their attorney. There's certain privileged information that needs to be, between the client and the attorney. So they're speaking directly to me. There's not a clerk or a secretary or someone like that translating. So, and it's absolutely wonderful because it's not just speaking the language. It's the culture. It's an extension of who you are. Like we all bring who we are to the table. So to be able to interact with other Hispanic clientele is just, I just feel like I'm talking to family. So it's just a really nice added perk of the services that I provide.
Yeah, definitely good to have you on our side. So yeah, I wanted to talk more about that. But first, the name of the show is called Just 2 Minutes. Just 2 minutes of random questions. Are you ready for this?
Awesome.
Okay, cool. So I have a timer here. So I'm going to set 2 minutes. And then I'm going to ask you questions, just random questions, and go. What do they mean when they say a crow's crow? Or a crow crows?
These are really random questions. A crow crows? Is that like, I don't know. What do they mean?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Oh, you don't know? Like, I don't know the answer. Is there one specific answer that you're looking for?
No, just curious.
Like an announcement? Like,
yeah, maybe. Could be.
Okay. Well, these are really random. I don't think I was ready for this.
If you visited your friend in Ireland and you walk in their parlor and they have a crow there, what do you do? As their pet.
As their pet?
Yeah, crow pet. Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't approach anyone's pet unless the owner told me it was safe.
What would you think of them as your friend? Like, you never knew they had a crow, and then all of a sudden...
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be cool.
Awesome. Is it proper to shake someone's left hand?
Is it proper to shake someone's left hand? Well, I suppose if they reach out with their left hand because they need to, then I think that you would accommodate them.
Okay.
I think customary, at least in this country, it would be to shake with your right.
Oh, yeah.
But I think if somebody extends, because that's happened to me, if they extend their left hand, it could be because they can't use their right hand, right?
Yeah.
So then you would accommodate them in some way.
Or they're holding water or something.
Sure. Yeah.
You go to McDonald's and there's 2 people arguing on who gets the last McChicken sandwich. How do you solve that?
Am I one of the 2 people?
No.
Oh. Because I would just let them have it.
But they're arguing. Like, how do you...
They're arguing, so who am I in the scenario? Am I the
You
one?
want to hold the peace.
I would just let whoever's the hungrier one get it.
All right. What would you think of the questions?
Random. Very random.
Yeah. Just the
Do
way
you know the answers to any of these?
No, it's just how people think of things, different things. Like,
I did have a bird once in my home. I did not enjoy that got in.
it got in?
Yeah. Yeah, when my home was in Woonsocket, I didn't enjoy that at all. Also a bat.
Oh, it's a bat?
No, there were 2 separate instances.
Oh.
I think it was a problem with we didn't have anything on the top of the chimney and
Yeah.
yeah, not fun. So when you asked if there was I'm like, I'm not approaching unless.
It's weird. I had a house Woonsocket, and I'm in the shower, and I'm like, what's that sound? It sounds like there was a dove that got through the vent, Yeah, so...
And you were able to...
So I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I don't want any death of anything in my house. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful. I love being a part of anything that we can connect with the public, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. So yeah, I wanted to talk about more of the Spanish-speaking community, because first thing, like for a real estate agent to be able to speak Spanish gives them a leg up, because there's a market for that that's not many people are able to help. So, but having you on our team to be able to help them with the closing, that's great. So what would you say, like, what's the culture like? Because I asked you a question about the left hand, because some cultures, especially Arab culture, it's very bad to shake someone's left hand. I'll tell you why after. It's very gross.
Okay.
Maybe I give too much. But what's the culture like in the Spanish-speaking community?
Well, I would say that and of course, making no generalities, right? Because that's never good to do.
Yeah.
But I think in my experience dealing, and even growing up, but in my experience in seeing and dealing with so many Hispanic families from different countries, there is a commonality of not trusting. So there is
not trusting the
trusting
English
other
speaking
people,
or
just being cautious.
Okay.
Being cautious. And it could be because of not fully speaking English. So maybe you have your guard up a little bit, or maybe because of just issues that have happened in the past. But I see a common theme amongst Hispanics where they're not necessarily going to trust and be so easy to trust others. So, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it's smart to also do your homework and not just believe everything everybody says, because there's a lot of people that are not very truthful and not very honest. And just because you put a suit and tie on doesn't mean that you're a professional or that you're licensed, right? So you have these pop-up shops, and all of a sudden they take your money, and the next thing you go back and they're not there, right? Gosh. So that happens. So there's a lot of things like that. So, and maybe also from being deceived, and maybe it could have been in their country or maybe here or wherever. So that's like a common thing that I see. And also when you speak Spanish and you can share in the culture, you allay their fears, in my experience, right? Although every once in a while, I will still experience someone who comes in, it doesn't even matter that I'm an attorney. It's like, they're just like want to make sure that everything's in order, which I respect.
You think they've been hurt before?
Maybe not. Maybe it's just their upbringing or whatever. But I always try to listen and understand the person and where they're coming and meet them where they're at. So if it's somebody who's very nervous or very untrusting, then I'm going to go the extra mile to make sure that I allay their fears, answer every single thing that comes up, because I want it to be an extremely smooth and comfortable and enjoyable process versus something where they're intimidated or stressed out or confused about, because that's really important. And even it doesn't matter whether it's English or Spanish. All my clients that are meeting with me are having the same process. So we're not leaving the table until you fully have all your questions answered. You understand it's an enjoyable process. And with me, hopefully, they're not speaking to me for the first time at the closing table, because I don't like that at all. I like everyone to talk to me even before they sign that purchase and sales agreement. We're developing a rapport throughout, and I give all my realtors and my clients, buyers, sellers, private lenders, direct access to my cell phone number so we can all speak. And then that helps, because when you've spoken to somebody numerous times, then when you're in person, it's like, okay, we've spoken several times, and it can be very intimidating for some people. It's their first major legal transaction.
Yeah, that's really unique, because I've done a lot of closings. I don't think the client really gets to meet the attorney in person until they're signing the paper. I do
also welcome people to come and sit with me and allow me to explain the contract to them fully. I know with technology, realtors, it's very easy most people will just electronically, have them signed. Always offer the buyers and sellers to come into my office so that we can actually go through every paragraph, especially if their English is a second language, and say, okay, if you have questions and you want, they have a right to consult with an attorney before they sign, right?
Mhm.
And if, as a realtor, I would tell anyone who's going to work with me, I would tell their clients, hey, Attorney Stella Guerra says that if you would like to go and consult with her before signing, or you want to call her and go over it, by all means do. Because that way it's taken out of the hands of, this is a contract with legal obligations, and the parties need to understand that. And they need to fully understand everything they're signing. So I love being in from the ground floor and just say, okay, this is who I am. This is my role. Let me explain the contract to you before it's signed. That way we're sure that it is the way you think it is and the way it should be, because there have been many times where people will call me and say, that's not what I agreed to, but you signed it. Yeah, but the realtor sent it to me to sign.
Oh, man.
So that's a problem, because what does that show? That they didn't fully understand and they're just blindly signing.
Or they weren't explained to.
Or it wasn't explained to me. But many people will just sign and not really take the time to read it. And so, or understand it. So I think that's super important. It avoids a lot of problems later at the closing table. We don't want problems at the closing table.
No.
And I don't want anyone saying I didn't understand something. So let me explain it to you.
Yeah.
I don't care what language. If I speak it and I can help you understand it, let me have that responsibility versus, the realtor. Because, in Rhode Island, it's very interesting where in this state, the contract's put in the hands of the realtor, where in Massachusetts and New York and Connecticut, those are attorney states, right?
Yeah.
So where we draft the contract and we are
making sure everything is
with our
correct.
client.
Yeah.
The realtors aren't sitting down explaining legal terms and legal jargon, and that can get a little dangerous, because you might be answering a question. Then what happens when they're asking you something in response to your explanation? If you're the realtor and you're explaining something to them and they don't fully understand, and then you are answering another question, are you giving legal advice now? Or are you sure you explained it correctly or answered it correctly?
Yeah.
Is that going to now, have the domino effect of other questions? Get the attorney on the phone. Get them in front of an attorney to sign. It's too easy to send things electronically and bang, bang, bang. Okay, contract signed in 5 minutes. Okay. But, there shouldn't be any questions whatsoever. So, and I would just say to any realtor, no judgment, no embarrassment. If you don't understand something, ask,
Yeah, don't pretend like you.
Yeah, even if you're a seasoned realtor, really, because there's so much depth behind every section. There's more to the law than just the little bit that's there. There's so much to know behind every provision in the contract. Yeah. And so it can be difficult depending on the scenario to understand it. And so I try to go through all of that with the client and set the expectations correctly. This is what my role is. This is what I'm responsible for. If it's your first time home buyer, this is what you should expect.
Yeah.
And that way we set the expectations correctly so they're not disappointed and stressed out when, they took a day off needlessly from work because they thought that was going to be the exact day we were closing, and it didn't turn out to be, as you know. That's not a set in stone date. But believe it or not, that's one of the biggest complaints. Well, I was told it was going to be that date. Well, who told you it was going to be that date, right? Because they didn't understand that date can fluctuate.
Yeah.
The closing date is not, but they went ahead and hired their moving truck
company.
and they took the day off, and now they have a problematic, job where it's not that easy to just switch, and it becomes stressful for them. I don't want that for them. So if you set the expectations up front correctly and you tell them what to expect, then they already know, oh, okay, I'm going to get a call from the attorney who will confirm to me that the closing will be on this day. And not just what's on the contract. And here's why it's not necessarily what's in the contract. So I explain all that to them. It helps them. It helps them understand and say, okay, wow, okay, this is my first time. I don't know anything. So,
what are the challenges that they have as far as when you're working with a client, buying or selling a home? What are the challenges that they run into? Most common challenge?
From a buyer or seller?
We talk about both, I guess.
Okay, so common challenges, I think, for a seller would be, and this is just across the board, being too emotional about their property and believing that their property is worth more than, that's a common challenge.
Yeah.
Where you have a seller who thinks that the property is going to sell for X when really it's not going to sell for that. And, again, to be able to have them understand that, of course, you're tied emotionally to this property. So that's priceless, right? If you grew up in a property or it was your grandparents and then you have memories to it, that's priceless. But that doesn't equal what the market...
The amount that you want for it.
Exactly. That's something that I often see. And sometimes sellers don't want to come down or they don't because of that, which is hard to tell somebody. Yes, you need to detach your emotions from what the market can bear on this.
The worst is like a home inspection when... we make sure like the seller to not be there because here comes a home inspector with the buyer and they're beating up the place. Like, oh, look at this. And it's like, if the seller was there, this is their emotion. Like, this is the home. Right. This is my heart. You're making fun of my...
Or picking it up. Yeah. The other common thing that I see, and this just happened on a deal that I had last week, where the seller doesn't have the funds to fix up the property and they have a buyer who's going FHA.
Oh.
This is very common. So if the seller doesn't have money to fix the property, but there's an FHA appraisal and inspection going on, as you know, if there's chipping paint, it's not going to pass. Mm-hmm. So what do? There are some buyers who want, and now on the buyer side, they want to take the risk of going in and fixing somebody else's property.
Yeah.
And that can get dicey, right? Mm-hmm. Because think about it. Are you going to actually fix up somebody else's property because you want it? Mm. But there's no guarantees that you're going to get your money back or that it's going to close or get the house.
You just fix someone else's problem for free. That's a cool thing.
That happens more often than you would think. And sometimes the buyer or the buyer's agent will say, you know what, sometimes the realtors will step in and say, you know what, I'm going to help. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to try to get to work this as a team. But I had a deal fall apart recently because the seller said, I don't have the money to fix it. And this is a problem because there were too many issues that needed to be fixed for FHA clearance. That's a common problem.
A lot of money to fix it? Like they couldn't...
He didn't have any money because he's maintaining another property as well.
Wow.
So,
okay.
So that comes up.
What about you? What's the most common challenge that you run into as a closing attorney?
One of the most challenging things is when I'm on the buyer side, and there is a title exam that we've done. We have a title commitment that shows various items on title. So a challenging thing is because now we are forwarding that title commitment to the seller's attorney. And that seller attorney is not necessarily aware of all of the items that were on there for their client. So they haven't begun to work on their seller's clearing of their title until they see the report. And when that report lists 5 different things and they were only expecting 2, that creates such pressure for everyone because sometimes there are things out of even that seller's attorney's control because it could be a prior owner situation. That happens a lot. And it becomes very
Why didn't they pick it up when they bought the place?
It could have, right. So it could have been another attorney who represented that seller.
That didn't see that
and
in
now,
the previous
maybe.
purchase?
Correct.
Goodness.
Right. That happens a lot. So the pressure is now that I've got my buyer's bank calling me saying that the buyer's bank is ready with the loan. But we're not. And everybody's calling, oh, the bank's clear to close. Yeah, but we can't close until I have everything I need back from the seller's attorney. Yeah. And there are things that are happening behind the scenes that no one is aware of because that's the legal side of what's happening with the title clearing. And that becomes very, very stressful. It is the most common situation where we may be waiting on the seller side it's their obligation to clear title, even if it was a prior owner. It's on them. It's not on me to fix that.
So their attorney needs to go back to that previous owner and fight and get that back.
Find them or whatever the case may be. What if they're deceased?
They don't have...
What if they're deceased? These kind of things happen, or it's in probate and now we're waiting. So nobody likes to wait because time is money. So now if the rate has expired. Now
Oh
we're
my
asking for
gosh.
extensions. Will the seller pay for these things? And sometimes the seller doesn't want to. And we're all about trying to keep the deals together.
Yeah.
But that is the most, for me, that is what I see
Finding
the
things
most.
on title.
Yeah, finding things on title that are not just an easy, one mortgage. There's various things that come up, unfortunately, that we have to wait. And so now again, I think communication is key. If I let the lender know and I let the buyer know this is why it's not closing, understand it's nothing you've done. It's something that was on the history of the title examination, then I think at least if they have an understanding of the status, that can kind of help.
Yep, definitely. So I was thinking, like, if I went to another country, like say Germany, and lived there for a little bit and didn't speak the language, obviously, and I wanted to buy a house, I would be nervous to trust anybody. Like, you're in a different country, so I can't even imagine what they're going through being here and not being able to speak the language to someone. Have they been taken advantage of, or how obviously it happens. Like, does that happen a lot?
Well, I haven't seen necessarily that anybody's been taken advantage of. What I've seen is when you pair a really professional realtor and a professional loan officer who are all ethical and honest with a great attorney, I said you have a
You're protected.
Super team to protect that client. And if you can all speak the language that client speaks, then you've got 5-star service, right?
Awesome,
right, because that client really needs to be able to understand everything and be able to express it in their own language, make all the questions in their own language, not having somebody in their family make the translation for them, because even that is stressful, right?
Yeah.
But I find that when people are honest and you're an honest professional and you express things, and communication is key, because the lack of communication creates stress for clients. If they don't hear back when they need to hear back, I've noticed that's something that causes a lot of needless stress. So when people need updates, call them, pick up the phone when somebody calls you, right? So these are all things that myself as an attorney, if I need to speak to the realtor and they're not picking up the phone, that is very stressful.
Yeah.
I need to try to resolve something, or I need information from you. And if you're MIA, which sometimes people are because maybe it's not their full-time job.
So what do you do in those cases?
It's tough.
Yeah. What do you do?
We call, we email, I get on the phone personally and I will start calling and texting and say, this is what I need.
Have you called the broker? Like, hey, I'm trying to reach this person.
Only in really if I'm really not getting through to and it's been a long time.
I've done that.
Yeah, I've called brokers too. Can you help us out?
Like,
somebody has to.
Do they want to work?
It's your
Do they want a commission for this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That can become stressful. If we're trying to get to the closing table and there are outstanding items from you as the listing agent, don't you know that you have to provide these items, right?
Yeah.
And so for our office to be efficient, we need everyone to take care of your own responsibilities, right? So if we send you a list of 10 items that we need from you as the agent, and we're still pulling teeth to get these, it's not the best scenario for anybody involved. And it's certainly not going to get us to the table quickly. So that I notice a lot. And it's hard because, we all want to work together, but it's very obvious when you have somebody who is a full-time realtor, who is there, who is on their game, and those that aren't. Or maybe they're just too new and they don't know what they need to do. And I love to educate and help train. And if I can make somebody understand a process better and it'll make them better at what they do, it makes my life easier.
Sometimes the client doesn't even know that their realtor is the one that's holding everything up. And
usually it's not the case because most of the realtors that we work with are very experienced, and hopefully they have, great brokers like yourself who are training and educating and all of that. But every once in a while, I think it's more so that they're very, very new and not necessarily know what's going on, right? Or they don't have the systems in place to stay organized or have the right mentors in their office.
Yep.
If there's anything I can do ever to help a realtor, I would love to have the opportunity to teach them, because I think when you know better, you do better. right? And of course, we want to keep all of that out of the clients. They don't need to know about that stuff.
Yeah. It's embarrassing.
It's stressful for them. They want to know that everything's running smoothly. So this is kind of like behind the scenes stuff that, we don't need to.
A little bit of coaching.
I always say
free coaching.
Yeah, I always say if there's something that we can resolve, there's no need to get on the phone with everybody to say, okay, we had this problem, but it's resolved. Why? That just creates stress. In my mind, I want every client, whether you're selling or buying, to have a very easy transaction. I only want to call you with good news, not bad news. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Yeah. But I will call you if there's going to be a delay that is not something that is out of our control, so that I can set the expectations.
So have you been in situations where your client was taken advantage of?
I've been in situations, and I won't lie to you, I've been in situations in years past where there's certain loan officers were not truthful with the buyer.
Yikes.
And they were told they were getting a fixed rate when instead it was a variable rate. And then they would come to the closing table, and when I would present them with the paperwork, they would say, well, that's not what I was told.
Wow.
Now we have a problem, because I'm certainly not going to force anyone to sign anything.
Right. Yeah.
When I am a notary and I am the closing attorney, and I ask every single person, are you signing voluntarily under your own free act and will? And nobody can force you. Okay. Yep. Because otherwise we're not closing. For me, I would never, it's not worth it, right? Because that person has to voluntarily do that. When I started picking up, and there were various instances, not recently, we're going back years, right? Where certain loan officers were trying to sell these loans and saying, okay, and of course, me not being present, I can't say what was said. But when the client was furious and saying, that is not what I was told I was getting. I was told I was going to get a fixed rate, and come to find out it's variable.
Wow. That's really bad. They have a lot of rules to keep them in check, the lenders.
Yeah,
but
and I think now thankfully there's a lot of less predatory lending because of the new laws that are in place, and with proper disclosures and things like that. But back in the day, I saw things that were not communicated the way they should have been with clients, because clients were telling me. So I would, in those cases, what I would do is I would actually stop and say, you know what, how about you call your loan officer from the closing table and talk to them, so that you can understand what it is that was said to you, or you can, air your concerns directly to, because without having been there, there's no way that I could know what was said. So why don't you call them up, make sure you understand, and then you can let me know if you're going to proceed or not. Because at that point, it makes it very uncomfortable for me. And I'm the last face they see. Can you imagine? I don't want anybody walking away disgruntled, upset, feeling like they were pressured, because it's not worth it.
I mean, you're there to protect them.
Exactly.
And you're delivering the bad news.
Right. So I would never do that. But, that's a concern. You obviously want when somebody comes into my office to sign paperwork, my hope is that everything that they're seeing is stuff they already know from their loan officer. Yeah. So, and I would say for the most part, that's the way it goes, which is good.
So as realtors, we have these preset purchase and sales agreement, sales disclosure, but I haven't seen any translated to Spanish to be able to have a seller who doesn't speak English be able to fill out this form. So there's I have to get a translator to be able to translate that. And the sales disclosure is very important, because they they lie in that, saying that there was no flood in the basement, and there was. You find out. Is there any documents that are both English and Spanish?
So I know some lenders now, or maybe all lenders now, but I've been seeing it very recently where some lenders in our closing documents, they are including loan applications in Spanish and settlement statements, the closing disclosure in Spanish. I have not seen a purchase and sales agreement come across in Spanish. I know that many years ago, I was approached to see if perhaps the Rhode Island Association of Realtors could do that in Spanish. I think it's very important that while documents remain in English, that the buyer or seller that doesn't fully understand that document need to consult with an attorney of their choice.
Mm-hmm.
so that they are fully being explained this document and what it says. Because without being able to read the language,
Yeah.
and further without understanding what it says, right? Because you could
Yeah.
read it and still not understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could speak English and not understand what it says. So I think the key is that you as a buyer or seller should not sign anything unless you fully understand it. And if it's a legal document, you should be consulting an attorney to sign it,
Yeah.
to understand it. If you're comfortable, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not, then you should consult, because everyone has the right to consult with an attorney of their choice to understand those documents. Because once it's signed, it's a legal binding document.
Mm-hmm.
So that's key. When it comes to me, I explain everything in Spanish, everything. We go through every single document in the closing, and it's all in Spanish. And I have received nothing but positive feedback from all my clients. They love it.
Yeah, that's really good.
They love to be able to explain everything and then some.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just supposed to be a very good day when they come to the closing. And even throughout, I've had clients call me up and say, oh, my lender sent me something I don't understand. And the first thing I say is, you need to call your lender. Because I feel very strongly about this, that we all need to stay in our lane. Right?
Yeah.
So I do the legal part. Don't jump into my lane unless you are doing the legal part with me. Right?
Yeah.
I don't jump into your lane. I don't jump into his lane or her lane, right? So if you're the loan officer and the client comes to me and says, I don't understand what the loan officer is saying to me about X, Y, and Z document, I say, let's go back and you need to call your loan officer and allow the loan officer to
Or if they say you're
explain
fixed interest versus
now, if they
variable.
are saying me, well, I don't understand because they're telling me this, okay, then we can do a joint conference call and let's try to help you understand what they're saying. But I always give deference to the person whose field it is, right? So the loan officer deserves the respect to allow him or her to do their job and to have that direct communication with the client. You as a realtor, same. Me as the attorney, the same. So I don't want a realtor answering legal questions on my behalf.
Yeah. Or accounting questions or, lending,
But definitely we all, as professionals, should be working together to work as a team to get to that table as efficiently as possible.
Now, you also, besides helping people with closings, you do other things.
I do. So the majority, like I said, the majority of my focus has been real estate, commercial. So I also do a lot of commercial work, which I love, totally different animal, but it's wonderful because what I'm seeing is we talked about the Hispanic community. So fortunately for a lot of people in the Hispanic community now, they are taking their small, maybe it was a side gig, and now they're up on the next level and they are purchasing real estate for their business. They're getting business loans. They're getting SBA loans. They're going and now leveling up to the next step. Or maybe they need to rent space. And I'm representing clients when they're buying assets or they're buying a restaurant or a church or whatever the business is, right? Or maybe there's real estate and a business involved, right? Or in the buying and selling of that. So
there's a lot of things to look
there is
for
and to do that, you have to have a good understanding of the corporate world and corporate documents. And, you could have an individual that's buying, it's the first time they're buying a business. So we have to educate them on what that entails. And so a big part of my practice also revolves around, I love it because I love to see someone who took maybe something that they were doing just as a side gig and now they are becoming an entrepreneur and now they're owning their own business. And it's such a wonderful thing to see immigrants come here and start a business and become financially educated and understand there's different programs and things that they can do. And it's really the positive energy that's involved at the end is just very contagious. Like I love being a part of that process, and they know that they have someone they can come back to in the event that there's other things that come up for them legally. If I don't do it, then I'll help them find an attorney who does. I always tell every single person at least my closing table, if you have any kind of legal questions or legal needs, or your son got into an accident or something happened, or there's a criminal issue, or there's an automobile accident, or you're going through a divorce, anything at all, let me be that contact person for you, because now we've developed that comfort with each other, right?
Yep.
And hopefully them with me. So they can say, Stella said I could call her and I could be that trusted resource for them. I may not be the one that is going to do the legal work, but I can help find them someone who can do that. There's wonderful attorneys all throughout this state and neighboring states. So if I can be that connection for them, or maybe I stay involved throughout the whole thing, or maybe they want me there because I speak Spanish and maybe it's not my area of expertise, I can do that too. So I'm doing family law, probate work, wills, things like that. So
that's great. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
And a lot of that, kind of stems off from real estate, or some of that, if somebody passes away, obviously can be real estate to be sold.
What's the most common service that you do that's kind of related to that, happens to be
probate work.
Probate?
Yeah, I would say probate, because, you have somebody who passes away and their adult child is calling me, oh, my mom passed and we have this house, and maybe they don't even live in the home. So it's a large asset. And now I did one not too long ago, last year, and it was 20 siblings. 20 siblings.
Wow.
And the woman that passed away had no children, and she was married, but left no children. And all of her siblings took a piece. The house had to be sold, but it's a lot. It was a lot.
You have to write 20 checks?
It's a lot of phone calls. Well, and she left no will. So, but we had real estate to deal with, and you become very close with your client because there's a lot of communication.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel very good in knowing.
How do you communicate to 20 people? Email?
No, I mean, we have a method for that. Yeah, email and, letters go out and all of that. But with my client, who is the one who was going before and being appointed as the administratrix, there was a lot of communication, and she was just very, very thankful. So if the payoff for me really is knowing that I was able to, and that was all in Spanish.
Wow.
See, and it's just the payoff for me, and the immediate gratification at the end is just knowing that I was able to help somebody else out, because there are lots of wonderful attorneys out there. But if I can do something that somebody else can't, because I can connect with the person because of the culture, the language, that's something that my parents instilled in me. So I've got to be able to use that, and so I'm blessed that I have that, because not everybody does. So, but I feel that people that don't speak English deserve to have somebody that they can connect with. And definitely there is comfort in knowing that they can express themselves in their own language, because these are very serious and emotional topics that people are experiencing, whether it's divorce or an accident or
definitely.
Imagine not being able to express yourself.
So one of the things is, so I'm an immigrant too. I came to this country back in 91, and we were able to eventually got green cards, but as far as, and I know an agent, European, reached out about how do I become a real estate agent? I was like, oh, I don't know if they have to be a citizen, and you don't. You don't have to be a citizen. It's crazy. I thought they had to, but you don't. Same thing with owning property. You don't have to be a citizen.
You can. I had a client from Italy that came, and she wanted to buy property, and she bought it cash. I can't tell you all the lending regulations, obviously, but you can be from out of this country and buy real estate here. There's no law against it. However, when you go to sell property, and you are still a resident from out of the country, there will be additional tax that they'll have to pay. But obviously, we want to tell our clients that before they buy, so they know, okay, well, just like when you're a non-resident of Rhode Island and you sell property in Rhode Island, there's a tax that will apply.
Is there more out of the country? Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, you can buy, just like you can go to another country. Most countries, you don't have to live in the country permanently to buy property there, right? People have vacation homes or retirement homes in other areas. So, yeah.
So it's easy to set up here if someone wants to buy, for someone out of the country or someone who's not a citizen to buy.
I mean, I would say that if you are out of the country and you're buying here, that if it's going to be a multifamily, that obviously you have a registered agent here, right? You need to. You must have a registered agent. It's the law.
Because the income that's coming in, right?
And you have to, if you're a landlord and you're not living here, you must have somebody registered in the state.
Yeah. Or property management company have them do it. And then,
like, I imagine they would have that in place. Or maybe it's their family members or someone like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Last question. What percentage of closings actually happen on time that it's on the purchase and sales agreement?
What percentage of closings actually happen on the same date that's on the purchase and sales agreement? I'd be making up the number if I threw out a percent. I would say a majority of the closings happen very close to the date. A majority. The ones that don't are because there's a problem on the lending side. There's a lot of extensions that get signed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of extensions that get signed. And I mean, I don't know. I've done a lot of closings in my years. But I think if you have a strong buyer, I mean, if it's cash is king. We're closing on the closing date or whatever day you say you want to close, right? But if you have to borrow money and there's a delay for whatever reason, and we have to get, the realtors are looking for extensions because when the lender says we need more time, Yeah. So it really depends on who's buying it, how are they buying it, if it's not cash.
Yeah. It's not set in stone, basically. Like if it's on the purchase and sales agreement, you can't guarantee that it's going to close on that day.
And I don't know why this is that I find this happens.
Go ahead, say it.
But there are parties that choose to travel and go on vacation in the midst of having a closing. Don't do that. Like if the closing is scheduled for January, what's today? The 3rd?
Yeah.
Don't schedule your travel for the 4th because guess what? We're going to have problems because it's not likely. It's very possible that it might not close on the 3rd. There's just too many reasons. And now we're going to ask for a 3-week extension because you're going out of the country to some beautiful Caribbean place. So guess what? That's going to cause stress on the other party. And then everybody says, why are you scheduling travel?
I thought you were going to say, I didn't know you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say they decide to pack the house up 3 days before, live in a truck.
They do that too.
Ready to...
And then wait,
it's not closing today?
Right. And so that's why, going back to what I said, set the expectations. So who's the first person to talk to this client?
The realtor.
The realtor. So the realtor should really be setting the expectations. When you're talking and you're going over that purchase and sales agreement and you're talking about the closing date, there's your opportunity to say, by the way, don't pack up the house. Don't get the rental truck, like everything specific. Like, let's kind of like see where we're at a week out, because you will have a very frustrated buyer. And the first thing they say to me, well, my realtor didn't tell me it wasn't going to close on that day. I'm sorry. The guy wasn't there when, on day one. Set the expectation correctly to say that may not be the date it closes, but here's why. Right? It's not because if everybody's ready and all the stars align and the seller has clear title and your lender is ready and there's no delays on your part, Mr. Buyer, for delaying any paperwork, or your employer hasn't delayed in verifying you work there or anything, right? If everything lines up, then we'll close on that day. Make sure it's not a weekend or a holiday though.
Yeah, I've seen that. Like, oh wait, that's a holiday. The day on the purchase and sales agreement. Gotta change.
So there's a lot of different little reasons why, but we don't want to create stress. So if that can be prevented from day one, then I think they'll have a better experience, right? So Definitely. It's just helpful because sometimes they do get very upset and they'll call us up. And I have had buyers call me and say, well, nobody told me it wasn't closing on the day on the contract. So I feel like that's something that needs to be kind of like in that very first conversation, right? In that very first conversation, here's what to expect. Here's what may or may not happen. And here's why that's not set in stone, sort of thing.
Nice. So Stella, how do people find you?
401-559-6999. okay, and we can put it out in social media world, is the best way to contact me. That is a direct communication with me, not with my staff, not with, any assistants. That is direct with me, which is what I love. I love to be able to speak to everyone directly. It helps me build a rapport. It helps the person understand who they're working with and what kind of services I provide. You can find me on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on my website, guerralaw.org. And I'm happy to help anybody who needs any kind of assistance. Anyone. Doesn't matter the language. My job is to make everybody's life easier. And hopefully we can see lots of new home buyers, first-time home buyers, first generation home buyers. It's so wonderful to have those experiences where it's their first generation and their first home.
Yeah, definitely.
And then take it another level. And now those people are now buying businesses. It's wonderful.
Wow.
This is the land of opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to see immigrants come and then they now have multiple properties. They're creating generational wealth for their children and buying multifamilies and buying businesses that they can, sell or hand off to their family members and their children. So
I think immigrants appreciate America more than people living here. I do. Definitely.
I mean, there's certainly so many opportunities to
definitely. Yeah. We're so lucky here. Everybody's so lucky.
And I will say one thing about, there are many immigrants that come and they're such hard workers and taking advantage of jobs that maybe other people will let pass. But those are the things that catapult them to the next, and it's nice to see people that were struggling at one point and now that they're able to secure their home. That's such a great feeling for them and for me to be involved in that process. So I appreciate anyone who gives me that opportunity to work with them so nice. I'm excited for 25. I hope we're going to have a great year. I think so.
Definitely. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
My agent's got a squad, we all in the zone. In-house help, so they ain't doing it alone. They focus on clients, negotiating win, while the back end's hand 'em, man, that's how we spin. I hand 'em business, watch 'em all climb.